I once again have a fresh install of Laravel where I've pulled in the laracast/integrated package. Now, we've learned about how to automate the browser, but often you'll want to test other things like your own APIs. For example, when I make a GET request to this URL, then I expect that set of JSON in response. Well, we can handle that just the same. We just have to make a small tweak here. So let's do this. Let's go ahead and extend the Laravel specific extension like we did before. And next, let's just switch back to example test. Well, you learned about visit, right? Think of that as mimicking a user. So when I visit this page, but when we are working with an API, we don't actually want to simulate or not simulate the process of opening up a browser. We just want to ping or hit a URI. And for that, using the integrated package, we use the basic request types like get, put, post, patch, and delete. So imagine that we're testing an API that just returns all of your users. Okay, well, we could say this, make a GET request to /users. And when we make that call, well, the most generic assertion we could make is that we get JSON in return. So we could say see JSON or and see JSON. Okay, let's run this and see what we get. PHP unit, and yeah, it fails. Of course it does. We don't have an endpoint set up for that. So I will visit routes.php. Let's hide the sidebar. And we'll say when we make a GET request to users, we're just going to return, well, ultimately some kind of collection. But for now, we'll just stub it out. Okay, so if we run this, we should get green, and we do. But now imagine that we return a string. Hello world. Well, that should fail, right? Let's make sure it does. We run it, and there you go. We expected that response to be valid JSON, but of course it wasn't. So why don't we do this? We need some data to work with. We know that the base install of Laravel 5 includes a users migration. So why don't we stick with this? And if I go to config/database, I will specify that we're using the SQLite. And then within my storage directory, we just need a location for that database. So now we can run php artisan migrate, and there we go. Next, let's switch over to php artisan tinker and add a couple new users. User equals new app/user. The user name will be John. The user's email will be john@example.com. And the user's password will be bcrypt password. Okay, that should be enough. So let's go ahead and save that and now return it when we request that endpoint. Let's go back to routes.php and I will say return app user all. Remember, whenever you make an eloquent query and just return that directly from your route, Laravel is smart enough to cast that to JSON, which is really useful, especially for low-level APIs that a lot of people won't be touching. If this is something where thousands and thousands of people will be using your API and you need to version it and things like that, you'll want something a little more complex. But for little stuff, especially stuff that only you will be using, this can be hugely beneficial. So anyways, let's run this, PHP unit, and we still get green. Now, what if I actually want to see what got returned? Well, don't forget, if I switch back to example test, you can still use those methods like dump. I use this a lot. If you just want to quickly see what got returned, call dump and then remove it once you have a better idea. So if we run it now, we'll dump out the output, which is useful. So now, what if we wanted to say, I expect the JSON that was returned to equal what I provide you, or even something as basic as I expect the returned JSON to contain this key value pair. Why don't we do that? Why don't we say we expect a name of John to be returned? Okay, well, I could say make a GET request to /users and then and see JSON contains. It's mostly just the way you would speak it. So name is John. And basically the way this works is if you pass an array, behind the scenes, we're just going to JSON encode it and compare that against the actual response. So this should return green, and cool, it does. But if we were to change that and run it again, of course it's going to fail. Very cool. Now, if we go back to routes.php, well, maybe we have another one that fetches a specific user by their name. Something like this. Okay, so really quick, we could say app user where name is equal to what is passed in, get the first result. Okay, so now we want to test this. Well, it's mostly going to be the same. If we return here, we're going to visit users/John, and we expect, well, why don't I show you something else? What if we want to assert that we got the correct status code, whether that's a 404 or a 200? Okay, we can say C status code or C status code is, if that's more readable to you. So let's make sure this works. We run it, and yeah, we get green. But if I come back to routes.php and we comment that out, well, of course that should fail, right? And it does. We got a 404 when we expected a 200. Okay, so let's bring that back. And next, let's line all of this up. You can extend this as much as you want. So if you want to check the status code, you want to make sure that JSON was returned, you want to make sure that the returned JSON contains something else, you can do whatever you want. But generally, if you're checking to see, for example, C JSON equals, well, in that case, you don't need both of those. This one would automatically take care of a general C JSON assertion. And the same for C JSON contains. Okay, so let's try this, and we'll say once again, name is John. We just expect the return JSON to contain that info. But anyways, we run that, we get green, as we should. Now, what if you have other things like creating a user? Maybe if we post to users, well, all we want to do is take that data and very quickly just throw it into the database. We won't worry about validation or anything like that. You can worry about that. So we know data will be request all. And we can just say app user create, or in our case, force create, since we're not really protecting ourselves. But anyways, force it and don't do any kind of mass assignment protection or anything like that. And we will return the result. All right, so let's see how we can handle this. Well, if we go back to example test, this time we're making a post request to /users, and we want to pass through our data in the process. Let me show you the trait really quickly. It's called API requests. And you can see right here, well, if we call post, we give it a URI and then an array of our data. Okay, so why don't we just say, we'll hard code this in. Name will be foobar, email. Remember, you can use the test dummy package, which is included with integrated, to simplify this stuff and make it a lot easier. But that's okay. john@do.com, and then finally password will be bcrypt password. Okay, so let's extract this to data. And then say, make a post request to this endpoint, pass through the data, and then, well, what if you want to do things like verify in database, like we learned about before? You still can. There's no difference here. So we could say verify in database, the users table, and then we can pass any fields that we want to confirm. In our case, we'll just do name is foobar. After we make this post request, I want to verify that a record is in the users table that matches this key value pair. So let's run PHP unit. Hopefully it worked, and it did. So we can confirm for the lifetime of this project that when you make a post request to this users table, and if you pass through the given data, we will update the database. And don't forget, the same is going to be true for if you're making a put request, or you're just updating an existing record, or you need to delete a record entirely. And then once you make that request, you can call assertions like we learned, like CJSON or CJSON equals to provide an explicit associative array that should match the output, or the more general CJSON contains, if you just want to make sure that a given key or property was in fact returned. All right, and that's the essentials of testing your APIs with the integrated package.